I'm John Steinmetz, drama in 1951.
I'm Mark Fiore, class of '83, music.
And we've been working on a documentary, and we want to let you know how we're progressing.
Last month I was in LA shooting some faculty and alumni.
And I've been shooting the people who are coming to New York. We've got people from practically all over the world. And we want you, our PA alumni, to be in this documentary. We want your talent and your diligence to be part of this project.
The entire documentary is produced by alumni of the High School Performing Arts and faculty only.
Here's what we've done so far.
Although criticized by a skeptical Board of Education, the school succeeded and became the template for performing arts education in the United States and in many other countries. We videotaped former students and faculty. We have Richard Benjamin in his dressing room just after his performance.
It was my mother, knowing me, who said, go and audition for that school. And of course you're petrified in that audition because, you know, anybody who says you're not going, you shouldn't be nervous is nuts, because your life can change. And it did.
We have Bruce Marks on the afternoon of his flight from the Royal Danish Ballet in Copenhagen.
I was brought into the big audition room, which was like a gymnasium with poles in the center of it. And the guy dancing before me was sort of jumping into the air and stopping. I mean, it was like, oh my God, how's he doing that? And he had little white shoes on and white socks. And I thought, if that's what they want, I can't possibly get into the school. And he was terrific. His name was Edward Villela.
We have Maura Fogarty just before her set at the bitter end.
This building, when I walked in here, was very old and decrepit. Plaster falling off the walls, double and triple pane windows, closing up broken windows, looking out over a parking lot. Just a very foreign experience for me.
We have Dom DeLuise playing with his bird.
He's a little excited because I don't think he's ever heard me talk about the High School of Performing Arts. When I went to that school, it was thrilling because we learned about radio, we learned about television. Connie Folks was there.
There's Connie Folks in his Actors Equity office.
Those first days were, well, I won't call them traumatic. I went with the flow, as it were, but you have to remember that I came from a childhood in the South, a childhood in South Carolina in the 1940s, heavily segregated, an all-male school, very macho, and I found myself on 46th Street in a homeroom with a lot of very young boys. They were my age, but they were very young. They mature rapidly in South Carolina.
We have Priscilla Lopez just after her Broadway run.
I found out about this school, that it was a school where you could sing and dance and act, and I thought, oh my God, I want to go to that school. So I found out from the dancers that there was a woman named Gertrude Scher who, if I went to study with her, and she had a school down on 14th Street in Union Square, if I studied with her, I could get in the school like that. So I went to study with Gertrude Scher, because I was a dancer at that point. I mean, I'd been studying since I was 7, and I considered myself a dancer. So I went, and it was not a happy experience.
If I had an opportunity to sit down with Franklin Keller, I would love to know what initially inspired him specifically to say that this dream could happen. I understand that he wanted to spread the performing arts beyond what he was dealing with in Metropolitan Vocational High School. But what was it that sparked him? What day that he said, this should change? There should be the ability for anybody to be able to go to a school and learn how to act, learn to dance, take up what instrument they want, and yet go through the public school system. I can't imagine how that came out of somebody's head, because it didn't exist, and why he thought about it. I would love to find out what inspired him, what made him one day say, this could happen here, we could do this. And that thought is what many, many of us are grateful he had, however he had it. I'd love to find out.
We had a wonderful experience when we did Madwoman of Chaillot, which was actually my senior class project. And we got to take the whole production to Indiana, to the University of Indiana. For some reason, they were it was some big theater festival at the time. That was in '52. And they asked us, somebody had seen it, I guess. And I played the fourth Madwoman, Josephine, who was the judge. And oh, it was an amazing group of kids.
After our senior show, we did our final scene. I felt like I rocked the house, and they, I think it was Tony Abeson, had me do Medea. And I did it with another person named Danny Burstein now, who's on Broadway in New York. And we did this scene, and at that time the BBC was coming to Performing Arts, and they filmed us. And it was playing in London at the time, just about our training in our school. And I just went to places in that scene that were, you know, dark. I mean, where Medea, and this is, I'm 18 years old, you know, and my mom would say when I was in the apartment, you know, with them, she said like there was like a darkness in my room, and I'd be like, don't come in, don't come in. It's like, and I remembered I bought like a thing of beef, like, I'll never forget this. I bought some beef at the market, and I got one of the knives in the kitchen. And I wanted to experience what it was like to stab, you know, when she kills her kids. I was like, I wanted to know what that felt like to stab into meat, like to beef or something. And they had no idea, you know, and I was walking around the house in my black long dress and this holy Medea-ness. They were just like, what is she doing? But I'm laughing at it, but I felt like very liberated, and I felt like that scene, I nailed it.
I also enjoyed the atmosphere. I enjoyed the intimacy of the school. I loved what the school created for young, creative people, you know. To be able to see people who are, you know, in drama and dance and running around up and down the floors in their dance clothes. You can go to English class in your, you know, your dance clothes, and the teachers don't care. You just have to bring your books, you know. And once you get that, and once you get that little kind of nucleus, that safe nucleus of people in that environment, you realize, oh, this is actually pretty good, you know. And that's, I think, when I realized everybody here is just, they're doing what they do, you know. They're all working on their craft right now. Whether or not they continue it doesn't matter. But in this moment, everybody's there on the same page. They're all in their right discipline, you know.
I think for me, and I never thought of this before, but I think maybe its legacy is that it was a very small place. And I think when it moved to Lincoln Center, we felt like it wasn't performing arts anymore. But because of the building, because of the kids, because of the teachers, and because of the attention that they gave you as being unique, I think the legacy was that, that it made you understand how special you were, and that you did have something to give. And the people that didn't go on to be in the arts, when we get back together, I think that there's a kernel of that. There's a remembrance of that spark. It's like Camelot, you know? There was a time, one shining moment in Camelot. And I think everybody remembers that.
If I get the opportunity to talk about the people who have loved me throughout the entirety of my life, from the age of 14 to now. I mean, even last year I saw Mr. Britton. After 20 years, I hadn't seen this man. And the love and the happiness that you're just here on the planet. After 20 years, and that man has seen thousands of students, and he knew exactly who I was. You can't beat that. You just can't. And I don't think there's a teacher, I don't think, maybe there are teachers on earth that will know every single one of their students and stuff like that. And maybe there are people on this planet who've got friends that they've had since they were teenagers, who've loved them through the worst. I don't know if that's normal or not, but my God, these people are really special. And I love them and they love me.
I wanted to get a new yearbook. So I went to 46th Street, to Performing Arts, and I went up to the office, and Miss Bowl was the secretary, and she looked at me and she said, "Claudia Manchester, what are you doing here?" And it was 10 years later, and it was just as if no time passed.
And we have the usual suspects.
I'm so pleased to be part of a documentary about the High School of Performing Arts. It really was the best time of my life. Not only was it a great time for me as a teacher, but for all the students that were fortunate to go through the school. My career there began, I was a speech improvement teacher in District 2. That's the Lower East Side, New York. And one day I received a letter asking would I like to be interviewed for a new school that was going to open. And I noticed that the letterhead had a lot of famous theatrical personalities. So one day, walking up the stairs in my speech improvement tour of duty, I taught at one of the schools that was listed. I asked the kids on the stairway, what is this school that they're talking about? And they said, oh, that's the school that they're going to open uptown for performing arts, for dance and drama and music. I said, oh, really? My little ears perked up and I said, I'm going to answer this letter.
People knew that they were getting good professional training that would set them up, and they learned enough about life so that they could be good citizens in their academic classes. And it was just a perfect way to educate. It was very funny about finding the School of Performing Arts, because Dr. Keller knew it would have to be in the theatrical district in order to take advantage of professionals from the theater to come into the school, and also to acclimatize the kids to where they would be working in their future.
Dr. Keller invited me into his office and said, Miss Katz, would you like to go up to the High School of Performing Arts on 46th Street? I was very careful not to indicate my utter enthusiasm, and I said, oh, I think it'll be easier for me to get there because there'll be a shorter subway trip. So in February 1950, I appeared at the High School of Performing Arts, and I fell madly in love with the students, the school, the principal, the faculty, and my work.
I'm happy to talk about PA because the years that I was there were my happiest as a teacher. I remember with such pleasure just walking to the school. I remember one day a couple of rough kids approached me at the entrance of the school, and a very short boy who was in my homeroom came up and said to them, she's with me, took my elbow and led me into the school. It was so touching.
Here was this big old building. Of course, it wasn't built for dance. The dance studios were on the top floor. And what they had done, I don't know what the room originally had been, huge room with pillars in the middle. Well, that's quite a challenge for any dancer, any student, to have to negotiate pillars, but quite good experience.
There's a great joy
really, of performing arts. I think for the students, as well as for the teachers, and certainly for me, was that we were innovators, that we were doing something that hadn't been done before, that there was a sense of pioneership, you might say.
The usual procedure of having to bring in scenes as well as having to do an improvisation. There were certain guidelines on the sheet and ratings that you were given to mark the students, and then the final decision was made by the chairman of the drama department.
I feel almost like I'm in a time machine. I'm trying to go back to the years, I guess they were about among the happiest years of my life, when I started out my career and was working at the School of Performing Arts. That was about 1955 to 1964. And it was a wonderful time, and it was a wonderful place.
Before I knew it, I was teaching at Performing Arts. I didn't have a license yet, and I was teaching at Performing Arts. At that time, things were a little cuckoo in Performing Arts because the studios hadn't been divided, and it was just the beginning. The school had started in '48, apparently. His vision for the school was, for everything, was to teach the vocational and academic and make the vocational schools have as good an academic program as the academic schools did themselves, like music and art.
As a student in that school, wow, I mean, you really had to pass muster. You had to really stand at attention. You had to do what you had to do. You had to be real. You couldn't fake it. They cut no slack. Your academics had to be strong, and your art had to be strong. And that, I think, was important for me when I look back on my life as, you know, now 30 years, maybe 34 years as a paid actor, as an employed teacher, dedicated teacher of this craft. I felt that the stuff that I learned here was so important that I started immediately teaching.
I walked into this old, decrepit building, and I thought I'd walked into a slum. I saw cracked walls, I saw cracked windows, I saw desk chairs which had more scratches in it. And oh my God, what have I done? I've shown up here. Within 1 week, the blazer came off, the necktie came off, and I loved every scratch, every broken piece of wood that I came across. The kids who came into my classes really didn't know what to expect. And I have to tell you, I didn't know what to expect either. And with a very short time, I came across some of the most creative, imaginative, bright, interesting, volatile kids I have ever come across in my entire life.
First High School of Performing Arts was a very unusual place, and it was Keller who was the visionary of that. He was quite a man.
We hope that you will join them by offering your talent and your memories of performing arts. Original music has been composed especially for this documentary. Here's the introduction to our documentary. It's what we call a rough cut.
This building was condemned and abandoned. It was built in 1894. The design was typical of New York public schools built at the turn of that century. It was an elementary school near Times Square, but the area had turned commercial when the Great White Way became the city's mecca for theater, and so there were few children to be educated in this building. In the 1940s, this street was a neighborhood of restaurants and theater support enterprises. This man, Dr. Franklin J. Keller, an educator at the height of his career, was propelled by the belief that everyone is born into the world with some kind of ability, that the function of education is to help students discover their individual talent. These high school students would then use that capacity to enrich their lives, as well as to contribute to the good of the country. To make such a school work, He wanted it located near the theater district. The Board of Education reluctantly renovated this building, minimally for Keller's folly. They did not expect it to last. Special teachers were chosen and licensed to teach drama, dance, and music. Additionally, academic teachers were selected who were sensitive to gifted students. The makeshift sign above the doorway read, "School of Performing Arts."